Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, in this bit of a estranging setting for me. So a few people here around me and a few people, well, quite a few people at home. Thanks, Compass and Studium Generale for this opportunity to host this meeting today about diversity and inclusion in the Technische Universiteit Eindhoven, which is a mouthful. I will make a short introduction on today's topic and then quickly move to the panel. Compass and Studium Generale have managed to find a beautifully diverse panel for today with Gerrit Kroese, Anne Venster, Kjell Revenburg and Rachel van Lijn. Welcome as well. But let me begin with a few confessions. So the first of all is that I'm really nervous. It's about, is the technique going to work? Are you going to have a good time? Will we enjoy ourselves? Will we have, well, the right conversation today? Well, I see 2 thumbs up. Great, thank you. And another confession is that I wasn't always a diversity believer or advocate. So one of the things that I thought was that women will reach the top, for example, eventually, because look at how many of them populate the universities. And another confession is that I don't really think of myself as an expert when it comes to diversity and inclusion, not more than you all are. There's so many things that I don't know and that I don't understand about diversity and inclusion. So there's lots to discover and to explore. But what I do know is that I think that we humans are connected, wired for connection and wanting to belong. Now, having been born in South Korea and raised by Dutch parents in the province of Zealand, the story I told myself for quite a long time was that if I had to deal with discrimination, it was positive discrimination. And it wasn't until I started studying in Rotterdam and in my early working life that I noticed that I got, increasingly more annoyed and nervous and also sad about remarks like, your Dutch is really good. Wow. And but where do you really come from? Or remarks like, it should be really special to be adopted, right? And have you been back to your country of origin? Because finding your roots must be very important. And it took me a while to discover that those remarks weren't really an invitation to a conversation. It wasn't a real question inside. So these remarks were very much, I think, about, confirming an image that was already there. Not so much about me as a human being or how I felt about it. So don't get me wrong, I firmly believe that there was no harm intended. And one other thing, I'm quite sure that I make fuck-ups like this all the time myself, unintentionally, maybe twice a week, but honestly, maybe more often, without being aware of it. So let's briefly look into the business case of diversity and inclusion. And I almost forgot this, that I have this slide as well. So what research shows is that diverse teams are more creative, more innovative, and thus more agile. Diverse teams are better at preventing tunnel vision because they use more experiences, more perspectives, more internal alternatives, and thus come to better informed decisions as well. And diverse teams also are better able to attract talent, have higher employee satisfaction, and are more customer-oriented. That sounds good, right? So why not say yes to that? And then there's also the experience that, creating a diverse and inclusive team is quite a bit of a challenge. So I have the privilege of coaching managers, quite a lot of managers who are working in an international context. And one of them recently called me and said, a little bit in despair, so I've invested a lot in creating a more inclusive team. And I think I did a good job because now, all of a sudden, some team members feel so much at ease that they start voicing they're convinced that, for example, death penalty is a good idea. And that homosexuality should be forbidden. Now, what do I do? Now, this is one of the examples, right, of why really working inclusively is quite hard sometimes and quite difficult as well. And I think what gets in the way quite often is our mind bugs or our unconscious biases. So we are very much formed by the way we were raised and by how we were socialized. So these biases, unconscious biases, are deeply ingrained in how we look, how we perceive the world, and how we perceive situations and colleagues and other people that we live and work with. So as I said, I believe that we're wired for connection when it comes to connection with other human beings, but also on another level, because our brains are always looking for confirmation of patterns that we already know. So let's just briefly experiment a bit with how that works. I'm going to show you a picture. Well, this one. I guess most of you will have to admit that you see things that aren't there. I guess most of you, I'm also going to check with the panel because I can see you nodding. So what you see is a cube probably, right? But if you're honest, it's not really there. So one other picture that I guess most of you will recognize as well. So in this picture you can see, a somewhat older woman, but also a younger woman. Now, it's quite probably the case that when you first saw this picture and you saw the old woman, you will have to take an effort, a real effort, to also see the younger woman as well, right? Can you see? Yeah. And the other way around. And the thing is that when you see this picture again, you will always see what you first saw, so the image that you saw first. And even though you know that the other picture is also, the other image is also visible, you have to make an effort to be able to see that time and again. And when you stop making that effort, the picture always flips back to what you saw first. Now, one other picture. What do you see? Take some time. And I'm also going to check with the panel because I can see your faces. I see big frowns and... Yes? I see Ludo nodding. So, may I just ask you, Rachel, what do you see?
Cow,
oh, you're really quick.
No?
Anyone else who sees the cow? Well, this is a once in a lifetime. I've never had this before. Now, I hope that there's also listeners in the audience who don't immediately recognize the cow, because it is there, as you can see. And the thing is, once you've seen the cow, you can never unsee it again. So on a positive note, using this cow as a metaphor for aspects of others that you hadn't seen before, once you've seen them, you can never unsee them again. Okay. So, as I said, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there's so much to discover and to explore and to find out and to, well, make mistakes about. So let's quickly move to our panel, if that's all right with you. As I said already, I can come and sit down now, right? Yes, put this back on. Welcome, Rachel, Kjell, Anne, and Gerrit. Well, and I asked you in preparation for this session to prepare a sort of pitch in which you, introduce yourself and also tell us something about why diversity and inclusion matters to you. Would you mind starting, Rachel?
Sure. My name is Rachel Verlein, and I'm a student psychologist here at the TUE. I've been working here for about 3 years. And why inclusivity means something to me and why I think it's important is because I find it's really important to feel very seen and heard in different dimensions, I think, not just as a person, obviously first and foremost, but I think for myself, I always feel so much better when I can recognize a piece of myself, whether that's being another woman, a person of color, whether that's being someone international or multicultural, so very diverse ways that I can look at it. And I think it's just very important for people to be able to recognize themselves and basically be able to feel seen within a community, whether that's, in the workplace or if that's, with your colleagues. And here, they're certainly at the university.
Okay, thanks so much. Mm-hmm. Gerrit, would you mind taking over?
Yes. My name is Gerrit Kroes and I'm the Dean of the Physics Department of this university. Our department won the Diversity Award of the now Royal Dutch Physics Society. But that was not the goal. My goal was not to win this award. My goal while pursuing diversity and inclusion is the quality of the people who work and live in the department. It's when you have a meeting and there is a more diverse composition of the meeting is going to be better. There are other arguments which are brought forward. The classical attitude in universities, and especially in technical university, is that it is a strictly male macho world with the culture associated with it. And that is not necessarily the best way to shape the institution. So the prime motivation was not the numbers, was not the percentages, it was not the award, it was the quality of the department.
Thanks so much. Anna?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Anne. I'm an industrial design student, and I'm currently, last year I did a board chair at my study association, and currently I'm in a university council on behalf of Groep 1. And diversity and inclusion for me mean that everybody feels at home and everybody feels that they have the same opportunity to achieve something. But I also really believe that diverse teams, what you already said a bit, diverse team really can function better and achieve more because you have a way wider view to certain problems, for example. And I also believe that for diversity and inclusion that we really need to talk about it because more awareness is needed. And I also think it takes a bit more effort than what we're used to. So yeah, that's what it means for me. I think it's really important to talk about it and to be aware of it.
Okay, thank you. Kjell?
Hi, yes, I'm Kjell Revenberg. I'm the team manager of Solar Team Eindhoven. We make solar-powered vehicles. And for me, as a team manager, it's really important that inclusion is really there. I think it's really important that if you feel included, you can communicate way better. Because only with open communication, you can go further. And diversity is a really interesting topic because I think you need diversity, as you already told us, for different and creative answers. Of course, we engineer a project, but we go further than only engineering. You also look at the social and problems were functioning. And there are organizational problems and design problems and all these kind of things. You need all kind of different people with different views of the world to make the best solution for these problems. And that's why we really want a more diverse team, of course.
Nice, thanks so much. So for today, as I said, there's so much to discover, right, about this topic. And so let's aim in this conversation to have an open conversation about, well, hopes and dreams and maybe insecurities and, well, who knows, little fuck-ups that you've, well, sort of committed. But also about lessons learned. And for anyone in the audience, it will be possible, so around 1:05 to also ask some questions. If you have any question, you can put them in the chat, and Studium Generale will select a few of them. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. Okay, so let's go to maybe some lessons learned, because from your perspective and from your context, you're all working somehow in, well, creating a more diverse and inclusive context, right? So what is a lesson that you've learned, maybe a best practice, or maybe something that you've learned about yourself? Maybe you discovered an unconscious bias of yourself. So what would that be? Maybe, Kjell, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I'll get to a more practical thing. Like at the start of the year, we didn't have a really diverse team. We missed some designers, and with those people that we missed a lot of creativity. And yeah, to get like we are a team full of engineers, and engineers always want to find the solution and don't want to look outside of the box. And after a while, we had a designer that joined our team. And we immediately realized that he could pull all kind of things, so he could really make our engineers look at a broader perspective. And I think that's just a small thing to show that like diversity can be way more than just all kind of problems. And we need more diverse people, whether it's personality or your background in studies or your level of education. That's really important. Mm-hmm. I think like what we also notice is that that like the lower parts of, no, it's not called lower parts, like MBO, so it's the more practical educationals. We didn't have any of those in our team. And a few months ago, one of those joined our team. And you immediately notice how these kinds of experience really improve the team and the way people think about it. So I think it also goes further that we have to include all kinds of different educational levels because everyone brings their own value to a team. Yeah. And that's what we really need, and that's what we also learned.
Yeah. And was that a shared awareness, or was that something that came from a few team members?
I think it's a shared awareness. We also discussed it with our previous team, and it's something that was not always there. And we were looking at it, and it really gave us a good awareness that, yeah, like at the university, you don't get a lot of practical experience, and that was something that we really missed. And I think with that, you can really, see how valuable each person could be. And yeah, we actually learned a lot from him.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Rachel, how about you? When it comes to, well, a lesson learned.
A lesson learned, I think, was coming to the TU.
Please elaborate.
Well, my lesson was I'd always worked in mental health, and I just always worked with other psychologists as well. And so to be now one of very few in a educational setting was a very new experience as far as different perspectives that you take and you learn. And so that was very interesting, but also kind of the flip side of what Gerrit was talking about. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, psychologists are kind of the soft sciences, and there are a lot of women. And so one of the challenges that we had is to make sure our team is diverse, to make sure that we do have a man in the team as well, and which is helpful, especially at a technical university where the population difference is more skewed towards men. So I think that's been an interesting challenge, and a lesson learned is, I think, realizing I think the different, not just the different perspectives, but the different interests as well. You know, as far as my primary area of expertise is mental health, and that's always, you know, going to be my first priority. But when I'm working in a multidisciplinary team, you know, you also have graduation, you know, points that need to be earned, and, you know, projects and deadlines and, you know, more practical aspects or financial aid. And so just kind of really being aware that there's more than just, you know, mental health. And then if you add onto that the multicultural layer that's involved in really being inclusive and not just different culture, but different languages, and how do you take into account someone's cultural background and making sure they understand things that are being explained to them as well. So I think just many, many areas I could
many
talk
layers
about,
as well.
for sure.
Yeah. So what helped you in, well, feeling at home or feeling welcome in this completely other context than you were used to?
It's a good question. I think in general, and I'm not trying to kiss ass, but I mean, the TUE is a very open community. I think what I really appreciate about this community is that where people might not be as diverse, there's awareness of that, and there's an openness to hearing different perspectives and to be inclusive. I do think that we fall into the bias of, I do speak Dutch fluently, of when there is more Dutch people than English speaking, that we tend to fall into Dutch very easily. I fall into that as well with a coworker that we have who's also only English speaking. But I think on the whole that we do have a very kind of welcoming community that's open to learning, even if we're not there yet.
Yeah, thanks. Gerrit, I think you're making, Yeah,
I was already approaching the microphone. It's, one thing is to have the meetings in Dutch, and English, sorry. But let it be proper English. Often I hear from students who are not from Holland or not from an English-speaking country that they have difficulties following classes which are given in well, in poor English. So I think it is important that all our teachers teach in proper English, and that the meetings and minutes are written and given in proper English. And you can still make a choice for US or UK, but let it be a good quality representation of the language, because otherwise people will never feel at home. If they feel guilty because they are the only one in a room who doesn't speak Dutch, and therefore the whole room of 50 people has to speak English, this is something you want to avoid. Then, because so it's a matter of quality of communication. It's also a matter of individual attention, and what you said. Well, awareness. It's, you need, when you want to make a more diverse organization, you need everybody who is there and everybody who is joining. So it is a continuous effort. This is not something you just do for a year and then you have the numbers and then you're done. That's not the case. It's a culture change.
Yeah. And it's so much more than just good intentions. Right.
Yeah.
So also working on the quality of, for example, English. Yeah.
But I also think it's really important that you can make mistakes, because I was talking English like right now and it's not perfect. So I still think that whether or not you speak perfectly English, that we still try to speak the language with each other, because, well, it's better to speak the language poorly between two people, but you can at least understand each other.
Yeah. I think also coming back on that culture change, it's also something that's really happening in the associations, for example, that studies become all English speaking, but you also have these traditions from way before that are, for example, in Dutch. And I think that's really hard to find that balance between what kind of traditions will we keep and what do we change. And I think that's also really important to talk about it and keep changing that culture, or maybe keeping some parts, but also be aware that you may exclude people with those traditions, for example.
Yeah. So it's setting high standards and at the same time being also open to learn and to well, just stumble across and moving forward at the same time while doing so. Yeah. So Anne, in your context, right, university board, is it called?
University Council,
yeah. Yeah, council. What's a lesson learned that you picked up while doing so?
Yeah, I think in co-determination, it's really, as a student, you are there as a representative from your student body. And what I learned is that it's really important to keep talking with all different kind of people. And it's really hard because, one, it costs a lot of time. And often in your representation, they're the same kind of students always. But what I learned, that if you talk with people that you normally don't really talk with, that you get so many different kind of insights and problems, for example, that you never heard before. Because, I don't feel that problem. So that's really what I learned, that you actively have to try to talk to people to represent them. And that's, one important lesson.
And repeatedly taking that effort as well. Yeah. So I think one of the aspects when it comes to diversity and inclusion is that some leaders or some managers ask me, but can I still set a standard then? Or should I just allow everything because everyone and everything is welcome? So how do you feel about that? Being a formal or an informal leader, can you still set standards and at the same time be inclusive? I know that's a new question, but...
Well, I would say the short answer would be yes. I mean, I can imagine it be challenging, me not being a manager myself, but I think you can set a standard based on values. You know, what is your vision that you have as a team? What do you want to stand for? And that be inclusivity in the quality of work that you're hoping to achieve, and the type of people and the ideas, and I think that can be based around values, and that there's a lot of room to stretch and grow and learn, and still have standards, of hoping to achieve certain things.
Yeah. Standards based on values.
I think you can set standards, but it's important that you don't set assumptions, so that you actually, when you, for example, build your team, that you talk to everybody, or and then you can set standards of what you're looking for, but not assumptions beforehand. You even talk to them, for example.
You stay flexible.
Yeah, flexible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least explicit this assumption that you have, right? Question it. Yeah. Okay, Kjell, were you about to?
Well, I was thinking. I think, yeah, you would of course do it because you can also change your standards. Some managers are really set to the old standards, and I don't think it's good. You have to look at all the new possibilities that are in the world, because why look at the history? Because the history is not always right. You did it a certain way, but that doesn't mean that it was the best way. So I think the flexibility to look at all the possibilities and give everyone at least a chance to prove themselves is the best way forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And how about you, Gerrit?
I think I don't see a real controversy between keeping up standards and diversity. There are a few differences you have to take into account. Like, there are differences between men and women. Men have a very hard time giving birth.
They do.
This is a major difference. You have to take it into account. But it doesn't mean you have to lower standards or so. You can be more flexible. You can allow more flexible timing. So this is individual, tailor-made solutions. But it doesn't mean that you have to lower quality. Not at all. I think that should be the same. Could and can be the same.
Yeah. Okay. Clear. Thanks. I'm looking also at the screen for maybe. So when you're listening from home, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And well. There's a few. I think there's a question come up. So first, I'll just ask one other question. So inclusion and exclusion, and as I said, I think we're all humans, right, and making mistakes all day. So are there situations in which you, obviously unintentionally, maybe give others the feeling that you exclude them? Do you have an example of that? And who would like to share that? Gerrit? Yes.
I can give you an example. This was an example from the starting of the Irene Curie program, where female candidates were the first half year of a vacancy, only female candidates could apply. Then I got applications from several male candidates who had male in their passport, but there was a difference. There was a transgender, there was a gay person. Those are issues where you have to handle this. In the end, we found solutions. We allowed those people to apply. Because if somebody feels that she is a woman, well, so be it. So there are situations where there are issues and where you really have to think.
Yeah, and then there's this is a new question that's raised then, right? And then you have to discuss that.
Was,
so
also
how do you
found out that we, as a whole, the whole university was not prepared for this question. So in the end, we had to find our own answer from the department, and we did together with the personnel department.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of also learning and developing in this regard, right? So I'm gonna look at the questions for now. So one, I think, is quite practical about you, Gerrit, saying the meetings and courses should be in English. Does proper English mean grammatically proper or with an easy to understand accent?
I think that it should be really well understandable. What I sometimes see happening in lecture rooms is that somebody is giving a lecture and they had English classes at high school but didn't really practice a lot. And I'm not saying that everybody should go to courses, but let the quality of the communication, especially in classes, be so good that students of any background can follow it. Also students who are coming from, well, China or so, who have even in English some kind of a backlog. So make sure that the students are served properly.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And then there's a question about, which is quite a fundamental question, right? About the difference between diversity and inclusion. And I'm just going to check if this question is from Vincent Merck. Would you maybe make yourself visible, and maybe
I'm here.
yes,
Can you see me?
yes, we do. So
I see Steven,
yeah.
Good news, yeah.
So maybe you can tell a little bit more about your question, and also to maybe from one of the panel members you would like to hear from.
Yeah, it was sort of a comment first. I make a clear difference between what is diversity, something you inherit very often, like international classroom. You don't have a choice. You have those international students in front of you. They come from all over the world, men, women, age, etc. Multidisciplinary, that's diversity. And then inclusion does not happen by itself. We have to do something about it. We've had lots of lecturers so far who don't do anything with diversity. So that's my point is that diversity is an act, is a fact, and you have to take an act which is inclusion. So again, based on diversity, you have to take actions, make a choice to make a classroom inclusive. It doesn't happen by itself. So I'd be interested to hear from the panel what their position is about that. And diversity is something you don't do anything about it. You have it. It's a fact, and inclusion is an act.
Ah, nice.
What would you suggest to do? That's for me two clear concepts which you often just say in one go.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be split first and explained.
Yes, thanks. So, who's up for this question?
Well,
Yes,
I don't
Gerrit?
want to be
Yeah.
speaking all the
Yeah.
time, but the way how I see it, diversity is as an act of numbers. Diversity is something you can really implement. You can hire or look for students from different backgrounds. Inclusiveness is something which can follow diversity. It's not the same. It's inclusiveness is more a feeling. It's more a community sensing thing than numbers.
Yeah.
If I could elaborate on that, just kind of from our, from the psychologist kind of perspective, and that we also offer courses as well. And when I first started, there had been in the past English language courses that had been offered, but due to kind of low turnout, they had been kind of put on the back shelf. And so, the diversity kind of, I hear it as more of a passive thing, or a given, as Vincent was saying. And the act of inclusivity was making the effort to bring those English language courses off the shelf, dust them off, and offer them again. And then to go another step further and to expand on other courses that were not yet offered in English, and to offer them in English, and to kind of continue and build off of that, to really try and serve all the students here. And make that action of, being aware of, okay, some students' needs are English language and some are not. And now we are going towards a stage where the courses we offer are whomever shows up. And that will determine the language of the course. So students are welcome, and if there's English language students, then the course will be given in Dutch, or rather the opposite, in English. But, if there's one student, then it's an English language course, and, if it happens to be all Dutch students, then we offer it then in Dutch.
Yeah.
But that's how we try.
Yeah. It's a nice
do that.
example.
I also think that you have to be active in inclusion. You were also talking about, sometimes the conversation steers to Dutch. Like when that happens, I try to actively say, so yes, and not start talking English back just to give them a sign. And I think that's the small things that everyone can do here at the university to make sure that everyone feels more included, and that you also can follow every conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
It's
Anna?
hard sometimes, though.
What?
I don't.
I mean,
it's not easy.
It's hard. You forget. I think what you were saying in being allowed to make mistakes, to be allowed to forget as well, because it's not always the intention to exclude. I think we just have to maintain awareness to include as well.
I mean, I also make that mistake, but when I notice it, I try to go back to English.
Exactly. Yeah.
Look a bit with compassion, right, to our mistakes. Yes. Anna, would you like to add?
Yeah, I was thinking a bit about the comment that diversity is a given fact. On one point I agree, but I think like building diverse teams, that you can do that, you need inclusivity for that. But I think it's some sort of two things that go in hand by hand, so that diversity is not always a given fact. But it will be if you are inclusive as well. So I think it's sort of a chain reaction of each other, and that you need both.
Yeah. So creating more diversity is also a choice, right? To start
Yeah.
doing that, as you described also in your
Yeah,
example.
with the Irinkeri,
Yeah.
but also with
Yeah.
building a student team or
Yeah.
building a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kiel?
I think it's a really good remark, because like if we ask 10 of our mechanical engineers what we need more, they would probably say I'm not a mechanical engineer. Well, if you look at a broader perspective, you probably need something else. And I think that's a really specific aspect for a student team, but I think you can find it everywhere. You need a more diverse team to also look at what you need even more to expand the
Yes,
diversity.
exactly. Yeah, and I think inclusion is also very much about an attitude of wanting to be curious about other perspectives and
I can also add that I think you're perfectly right. And I also think that if you create a diverse team, but you forget about inclusiveness, the diversity is unstable. It will go away.
Yeah.
So to keep it that way, the inclusiveness is really, you have to do it, and you have to build it.
Yes, very true. Because I hear a lot that so then there's a diverse team, but people just leave because they don't really feel included. So they're asked to join because of their different background in whatever sense. But then when it doesn't, when they don't feel involved and really welcome or really valued with their different perspectives, then it just doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, so time-wise, we have about a small 5 minutes left. No more questions from the audience. I was thinking, as we said, it is a bit of a tough thing. It's necessary, and we believe in it, and still it doesn't come about by itself. So, what is something that you are doing maybe every day, or that you plan on doing, for example, starting tomorrow? What can you do to contribute to a more diverse and inclusive environment? So, Kiel, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I think it's really important to understand the other person. Like you were talking about transgender people. I also live in a student house with a transgender person. He became male, and it's like the small things to look at those pronouns, and when someone asks a question, that you can really elaborate it on it, and try for other people to understand it. I think inclusion is not just that I accept him, but it's also that I try to help understand other people to accept him like the way he is. And I think that's what we can do even more, and that's just one example, but it's not just with transgender, but it's also with people of color, women or men or other genders, and all of these kind of things.
Also taking a responsibility for a wider group, right? And not just yourself.
You have to be part of the change.
Yeah.
I have also something maybe the TUE could do as well, because also in the Vision 2030, TUE talks a lot about more multidisciplinary teams, but I do think that when you are in a multidisciplinary team, you have to learn how to work together with all different kind of people, and that is something, especially when you're just starting here, that you really need to learn and actively need to learn. And I think that is a really important part of the TUE as well, that they take that in hand and they understand that, okay, we have to learn these students how to work together, and not just throw them together in a group and let them see how to work it out, but really guide students in that way of how to work in a multidisciplinary, how to work in a diverse team. And it's something that I think should be part of the education as well.
That would require meta skills.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, thanks. And Gerrit, how about you?
It's something we did in our department is try to find good examples. And in my case, I went to Groningen for a full day and talked to the people there. This was 3 years ago. And they already had a good program. And some things are simple, like when you have a committee that decides on money or people, make sure it has a diverse composition. Those are extremely simple things to implement, but they make a huge difference in this case, inclusiveness. So don't forget to look around for good examples.
Yeah,
they are
that
there.
are already there. Yes, thanks. Rachel?
Yes, I would say, kind of to expand a little bit on what Anna had said before, is really just continue to have the conversation. That keeps us aware and awake of, what, who are we including in this and who might not be included in this if we do this. Is definitely a takeaway when it comes to either courses, but also who's sitting at the table, who needs to be there as well. And to really have the conversation and to have those hard conversations is already, I think, a step in towards inclusivity, is just being willing to talk about it.
Yes, thanks
Yeah.
so much. Well, time flies. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. And on a practical note, I have to mention that for bachelor college students who would like to register for the SG and Use can now do so using the link that will be provided in the chat. And after this session, we'll have an informal discussion session afterwards. You're very much welcome to join us if you have time and if you're not running off for a class. The session will be hosted by Ludo van Meeuwen from Compass, and the link is also shared now in the chat. Thank you for joining us, and have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.